Room's full, the young attendant says, eyes sliding past me to the polished stroller family behind, his lanyard glittering under cold fluorescents as if policy were jewelry, while I stand there in my worn cardigan with a blue folder pressed to my ribs and my granddaughter's small hand steadying my phone where code A103 burns like a lighthouse. The security guard's cedar cologne and clipboard edge me backward. My brother's smirk drifts like a private joke over the counter glass. And the whole lobby hums. Printer chirps, vents hissing, alphabet mats shining with disinfectant. An efficient machine that makes space for shine and shrugs past the man who arrived early, counted the minutes, and asked only for the room he reserved to read to his grandkids. I swallow the heat, square the paper with the laminated policy no one touches, and raise my voice the way I learned in crowded branches, calm and precise. Because if this place runs on rules, it will have to hear one read aloud. It will have to see a record honored. And I am about to make sure of it. Before I continue, tap subscribe and say where you're listening. If this resonates, share it so doors stay open for people like me. Room's full, the attendant says without meeting my eyes, and calls the next number over my shoulder while my confirmation glows on my phone like a small lighthouse. The hum of the building swallows the rest of his words. Air vents breathe a steady draft over the children's corner. Plastic alphabet mats smell faintly of disinfectant and crayon wax. Behind the counter, a laser printer chirps, feeds, and spits a thin stack that slides into a tray with a dry slap. I steady my blue folder against my ribs and feel the smooth edge of the printed email inside. The subject line carries my reservation like a thread I can pinch between two fingers. Code A103, today, late afternoon, children's reading room, 30 minutes. My brother drifts into my peripheral like an old habit, hands sunk into his coat, a quiet smirk tucked away for himself. He doesn't need to say a word. He lets a quiet breath through his nose, the kind people hear without turning. Somewhere near the entry, an automatic door hisses. Somewhere behind me, a toddler laughs in a way that crests and breaks like a wave hitting tile. The attendant, young, careful beard, lanyard dotted with pins, moves his mouse, clicks 3 times, and keeps the same neutral tone I learned to recognize when I spent years stamping dates into the bellies of books. Neutral, then absent, then on to the next. I keep my voice even and my posture simple. I have lived too long among rules to make a show of them. But inside me a string tightens. I arrived ahead of time. I watched the numbers step along the screen. I saw mine hover and flicker, and then I watched it lose its place like a bubble pulled under by another bubble. The counter smells like alcohol wipes. A small ceramic dish holds paper clips and a rubber band that has given up on its shape. A laminated copy of the room policy leans against a plastic stand. Prioritized reservations, order of arrival, 15-minute grace period. The letters are plain, black on white, and I could recite them without looking. I have taught people to read rules the way they read maps, to see not only where they are, but where they are headed. "Room's full," he repeats, more to his screen than to my presence, and waves toward a bench where families cluster with diaper bags and sippy cups. His finger trembles now and then over the mouse. He is not cruel, he is busy, and the kind of busy that prefers habit to scrutiny.
I breathe and set the blue folder on the counter with both hands. The grain of the paperboard catches a sliver of light. My printed email lies on top. The code sits in bold like a railroad spike driven through the sentence. A103. I have learned to hold symbols like that steady. They anchor me when other people's voices get bigger than the space. My granddaughter presses against my elbow. Maya is small and serious when she wants to be, big-eyed like her mother, fingers quick with a phone. She has the confirmation open. The screen shows the date, the time, our family name, typed the way I typed it decades ago at a kitchen table. careful blocks, letters standing like fence posts. She doesn't say anything. She just holds the phone at a helpful angle. She has inherited my patience and added her own technology. The smell of old jackets and wet shoes sidles through the lobby. Someone opens a thermos and the air remembers coffee. A cart squeaks past with a tower of young adult novels. The squeak has a rhythm: quarter note, half note, quarter note. The security guard, tall, neat shirt, radio clipped to his shoulder, pauses near the end of the counter and draws a slow square with his gaze over my folder. His clipboard rides his palm like a second hand. He is the kind who feels responsible for the boundary between order and confusion, and he draws that line with whatever pencil someone gave him. My number is still on the screen. Then it isn't. The next number appears, and the attendant's voice lifts without looking at me. My brother leans a little nearer and looks a little farther away, like a person stepping toward a window to look at a distant scene. I mark the time on my internal clock. Years among stacks taught me to keep two clocks, the official one everyone can see, and the one by which I judge fairness. "Sir, you can have a seat, and we'll see," the attendant murmurs, the way someone nudges a problem into a waiting room. His badge reads, Operations Associate. I note that. I note the hour on the lobby clock. I note the small scratch near the bottom left of the glass where a key must have kissed it once. Maya shifts her weight. Her shoes are bright and clean. She tilts the phone and the code fills our tiny world. A103. I nod to her and touch my pocket for a pen. The clip leverages against the fabric with the stubbornness of an old hinge. I write, Arrival 5:55. Reservation 6 o'clock. Screen skipped. The pen leaves a groove perfect enough to read by touch. The security guard steps closer. The radio breathes static. He asks to see the contents of my folder. The words are round and empty like the ones on the policy sheet. Routine, standard, quick check. He smells like wintergreen. I open the folder and show the printed email and the forms inside. A library card renewal for a neighbor I promised to witness, a list of books the children want to find. He runs his eyes over the paper as if gauging weight. I am not offended. I am indexed. Behind the counter, a second monitor wakes, blue light pouring into the low afternoon like a cooler complement to the yellow bulbs over the children's carpet. The manager of the shift makes an appearance. No announcement, just a veteran steadiness that carries a ring of keys that matters. Her cardigan is the color of library chairs in the 90s. Her badge says, Supervisor on duty. She lays a gray binder beside the keyboard, the kind with plastic pockets to cradle laminated checklists. I know that binder's feel, the way its corners nick your knuckles if you're not careful.
The attendant keeps his hands on the mouse. The supervisor keeps hers on the binder. The guard keeps his on the clipboard. My brother keeps his in his coat. I keep mine on the folder, and the phone is steadied by Maya's two little hands. The elements of the scene arrange themselves like a tableau in a teaching exhibit. Policy, record, schedule, oversight, witness. October is not loud in here, but it is present. Posters for awareness line the corkboard near the entrance. Purple ribbons that bend and loop into themselves. I have taught for a long time that institutions show who they are when they are busiest. The cracks do not open when the room is empty. They open now, and I can feel the familiar pull to do nothing but take it, to be swallowed by the soft mechanics of shrug and delay. I do not take it. I breathe into the afternoon and let the breath leave clean. I align the printed page so the code sits square in front of the attendant. I point with one finger in a way that suggests teaching, not accusation. I learned long ago that gestures speak louder than arguments. The page rustles. The printer behind him chirps again and spits more proof of other people's certainty. A child drops a plastic block, and it clacks against the floor, hollow and bright. A stroller squeaks as someone turns it around a bench. The clock gives a tired tick. The manager peers toward the screen, and the attendant minimizes a window, then another, like a person clearing away dishes, but not washing them. I step a half-inch closer to the counter and feel the floor seams through the rubber of my shoes. My hand is steady. My voice will be steady when I use it. The world can become very small at a counter like this, small enough to contain only you and your proof, and the small gap between them. I will not fill that gap with heat. Maya's shoulder presses my arm. She keeps the code centered. A10-3 shines with the calm authority of something simple done correctly. I have always liked that kind of authority. It does not raise its voice. It does not need to. A radio crackles again. The security guard shifts his weight and glances toward the lobby doors. The supervisor flips open the gray binder and extracts a single sheet protector that holds the room policy, and the plastic whispers against the paper. She places it next to my printout on the counter, as if laying two maps over a shared terrain. My brother's smirk cools into a curiosity he does not quite own. He leans, he watches, he measures. I register him only as weather. Weather passes. Records stay. The attendant's hand finally leaves the mouse and hovers over the keyboard. I raise my printed email until the bold letters A103 sit level with his badge, and I keep it there as the next number pops on the screen and the voice from the small speaker begins to call it. The small speaker finishes its syllables and leaves a thin aftertaste of static in the air. The number it called isn't mine. A ripple moves through the families. Bags shift. A stroller wheel squeaks. A child negotiates with a whispering parent. And then the surface goes still again. My paper stays level with the badge. My hand does not shake. The fluorescent bulbs hum over the counter, soft but relentless, a chorus that makes your shoulders circle in tiny, tired arcs. The attendant inhales in that clipped way people do when they are filing something inside themselves. His eyes travel from my code to the screen and back to the bench. It is a delicate refusal, constructed from small parts, the way his mouth tightens at one corner, the shrug he never lets reach his shoulders, the nod toward nowhere. He moves the mouse. Windows jump. One collapses. Another returns. The code on my page holds its ground.
The security guard edges nearer, as if drawn by the magnet of a half-set boundary. His radio breathes and then stills. He wears a clean cedar smell that clings to wool when autumn wakes. He asks to see inside the folder again, and I let him. My fingers part the papers with respect, as if turning thin bones. Plastic page protectors whisper. The printed email rests on top like a lighthouse under glass. Maya stays at my elbow, making the harsh light kinder by how she holds herself. She doesn't fidget, she doesn't huff. She anchors the moment with a steady gaze. Her phone screen casts a pale rectangle over my knuckles, and in that glow the letters of our name look like something carved into a lintel. She is learning how procedures are supposed to work, and how they sometimes refuse to. A cold draft from the vent sails across the top of my head. Somewhere behind us, the children's computer station chirps as a timer reaches 0. A beep, beep, beep that tries to sound friendly but doesn't mean it. A cart passes with a tower of picture books and a note card on a stick that reads, "Reshelve, 398.2 folk tales." And the wheels click softly at every tile seam like a metronome that believes in order. The attendant's keyboard remains mostly untouched. He rests his fingers above it like a pianist who has forgotten the song. The supervisor on duty still stands at half distance with her gray binder, reading the room before she reads the screen. My brother slides along the edge of the counter and parks himself near the small stack of registration forms. He adopts the patient posture of someone waiting for something he never asked for. He wears the day easily. I wear the day correctly. I remind myself to unclench my jaw. I taste metal and then let it go. I press the blue folder to the counter so the edge lines up with the faux wood grain. The texture is different under each fingertip. One ridge is shallow, one deep, the factory's small signature. I think of all the edges I have lined up in my life. Book spines, due date slips, school essays, everything squared before the stamp hit. The attendant calls another number. It is the one after mine. My inner clock scratches a mark on its face. The laminated room policy on its plastic stand watches us pass like a signpost ignored by a parade. Prioritized reservations, order of arrival, grace period. I can point to each line without turning my head. The rules feel like a coat hanging on the back of a chair no one sits in anymore. I place my printed email next to the laminated policy. 2 rectangles of instruction, one old, one specific. My hand finds a pen, the kind that pretends to be disposable but keeps coming back in the pocket. I record the timestamp from the lobby clock, the digits that change with the heavy certainty of an ordinance. The ink smells faintly of solvent and something sweet underneath. The guard asks again about the contents of the folder. He frames it as a routine courtesy, and I make it into one by how I comply. Pages lift, settle, lift. He nods as if the nod were all the tool he ever needed. The gesture is neither hostile nor helpful. It is the kind of neutral that moves you a fraction of an inch backward without your feet stepping. I ask to have the reservation checked in the system, and I keep my voice even. Even sounds like a quiet hallway. Even means the sound arrives and leaves without scraping the paint. The supervisor hears the request and moves the binder forward, opens to a tab where the policy lives in a sleeve. The plastic sleeve is scuffed at the corners from years of being almost consulted. It curls, then lies flat, like a habit broken slowly.
Maya lifts her phone a little higher. She has the email with the blue banner and the black type. The code is centered. I could teach an entire class on the importance of centering what matters. She glances up at me, and I give her a small nod, no bigger than a gust. It is enough.
We are a team of 2 hands and 2 screens laying a table for a plain meal. Humiliation, when it is practiced well, does not arrive in a single blow. It arranges itself as a set of quiet refusals, small misplacements, the kind of inattention that has a rhythm. The rhythm is clack, hum, click, sigh, call, wave, pause, pass. A middle-aged man next to us coughs into his elbow and looks away at the exact moment the screen moves on. A woman juggling twins in matching caps shuffles to the counter when the attendant nods her forward. No one is cruel to me. They are kind to the frame that excludes me. The bench digs into the backs of my knees. The varnish has the sticky give of a surface cleaned too often with cheap spray. The poster for October awareness curls at one corner and shows a layer of older tape underneath. A volunteer drops a handful of color-coded passes into a plastic bin, and the sound is like beads falling into a hollow bowl. Organization has its own music, even when it is out of tune. I asked to divide time with the next family if that would help. I offer the solution I would have accepted when I sat on the other side of counters for a living. 15 and 15. Time that breathes evenly and leaves no one out of air. The attendant says we will see. The phrase is the gentle cousin of no. I catalog it as such. Maya whispers to me not with words but with presence. She shifts closer, becoming a warm ridge along my side, a small being-sized proof that a plan exists beyond this counter. She swipes to a screen that shows the timestamp of the email. She knows screenshots count. She knows the difference between what happens and what is recorded and how to fit those two into each other until they match. The supervisor finally approaches the terminal. The way she moves tells me she has seen rooms like this get away from themselves. She sets the binder down so the policy faces both of us, not just her staff, which is a choice that matters. She asks the attendant to pull the reservation log, and he navigates there with the careful, clumsy haste of someone who hasn't done it under eyes before. Windows bloom and close. A drop-down menu opens like a secret trapdoor. He hesitates at the options as if the correct one might sting. The guard stands just outside the small square we have built at the counter. He is the fence. He is not the field. He shifts his weight, and the floor gives a tired creak that probably only I hear. The log appears in columns, rows of gray and white alternation. I can't read the words from this angle, but I know the shape of a table that decides things. The attendant scrolls, too fast, then too slow. The supervisor lifts a hand and makes a small downward motion. The scroll tames itself. The cursor travels the page like a searchlight dozing between docks. I feel the old librarian in me align with the screen, the way a magnet finds north even when someone has spun the compass. I know what line I'm looking for, not because I see it, but because I have seen how such lines hide. They are never at the top. They are never clean. They are usually just below a fold, just after a minor interruption, just under the place where someone took a phone call and lost their place.
My brother hovers at my edge like fog that would like to be weather. If this were a ship, he would be the passenger who asks if the ocean is always this color and never waits for an answer. I did not check to see his face. I attend to the shapes that matter. The policy page, the printout, Maya's screen, the log. A child somewhere knocks over a tower of soft blocks and a staffer's soft shoes whisper across carpet. A printer behind the counter yawns to life and produces labels. I listen to the library breathe and keep my breath steady with it, a duet I've practiced my whole life. The supervisor leans in. The cursor hesitates over a row. I know the feeling of recognition even at this distance, the way a body tips when it finds what it was meant to find. My paper is still, my hand warm now where the edge presses. Maya's phone is a square of certainty. I ask, in the voice I once used to quiet a room full of teenagers, for the policy to be read aloud while we wait. The supervisor obliges, finger tracing the bullet points. Prioritized reservations, order of arrival, grace period. A sound structure that is only as strong as the hands that carry it. The attendant's face shifts a half-inch toward relief or worry. It's hard to tell from the side. He clicks. The screen changes shape slightly, the way a page settles when a folded corner flattens. The lobby clock turns its red digits with the slow audacity of authority. My inner clock marks another line. Maya squeezes my forearm, a silent punctuation that says, "We are here, we are recording, we are not leaving the facts behind." I feel the weight of her hand and the lightness of her hope at the same time. It steadies the space between proof and recognition, that thin bridge over a quiet drop. The cursor stops. The supervisor's chin lifts a degree. The table holds still in a way tables do when the answer sits exactly where it should. The overhead speaker pops and summons the supervisor to the terminal by name. The overhead speaker snaps like a small bone and drops her name into the room. And the sound draws every floating piece of attention toward the terminal. She steps in close, and the little island we have built at the counter tightens its borders. The gray binder smells faintly of dry plastic and old copier toner. Her cardigan sleeve whispers against the laminate as she leans. The log blinks once, as if it needs reassurance that it is being seen. I feel the hum of the ventilation on the back of my neck, a cool hand that keeps me from overheating. I let my shoulders settle. My paper stays aligned with the edge. Maya lifts her phone so the code is level with the supervisor's line of sight, and the screen throws a pale version of our certainty onto the counter. I mark another minute in my head and pair it against the red digits overhead. The two clocks rarely agree. They are not meant to. One is public and slow, one is private and exacting. The supervisor's finger follows the grid like a surveyor tracing boundaries on a map. She asks the attendant to adjust the filter, and he does it in a sequence that tells me the filter has never been a friend. Drop down, scroll, click, wait, and the table refocuses. The cursor circles back. It is not a hunt driven by instinct, but by patience. I know the music of this work because I played it for years. The way your breath shortens when you suspect the error is ordinary. The way your eyes calm when you recognize the ordinary thing hiding in plain sight.
A gust of cold follows a family through the doors. The air smells briefly like wet wool and old rain. The security guard shifts to allow their stroller through the narrowest part of the gap and then returns to his post in the same motion, a swing of the gate that does not squeak. He glances at the binder, at my printout, at Maya's phone, and then at the supervisor's face. He seems to want someone to draw a line he can enforce. He is built for clear lines. My brother hovers in the corner of the scene, the kind of figure a painter would put near a window to suggest depth. He is less smirking now and more interested than he knows how to look. He wears his hands like pockets. They hold nothing and suggest plenty. I keep 'em in the edges of my sight like I would a cloud. Clouds try to be important, and sometimes they are. Sometimes they are just weather. The attendant's mouse stutters, corrects itself, and then rests. The supervisor makes a small sound that is not approval and not concern. It is the sound of someone finding a familiar landmark and realizing the trail they took to get there was longer than necessary. She gestures to a column that might have been collapsed. The window breathes and widens. Rows step into view, gray, white, patient and dull as linoleum. Maya leans into me, warm and spare, a little comet tethered by a thread. She knows what evidence does in a room like this. She angles the phone so the subject line sits like a banner across the top. The battery icon is a thin sliver of green. She has the quiet focus children find when they believe they are helping to build something real. Her calm is a small vote in favor of us all. The room builds pressure in increments. The bench creaks under a new family. The clock turns its red bars. The printer spits a label and the paper curls as it cools. Words from nearby mouths fold into each other until they become a single fabric of waiting. I swallow and feel the tendons in my neck slide against each other like well-thumbed strings. The blue folder presses its spine into my palm, familiar as an old hymn book. I think about how rules work when nobody is counting. They rest. They gather dust and wait for a moment exactly like this one. I have made peace with the waiting part over a lifetime. Delayed buses, postponed appointments, postponed apologies. It is not the waiting that grinds a man down. It is the insistence that his place in line never existed. I roll my tongue against the back of my teeth until the sharp edge of that thought rounds off enough to swallow. The supervisor requests the timestamps. The attendant scrolls. The small scroll bar tries to outrun itself and then slows. I picture the log as a river whose surface reveals only the fish that like sunlight. The one I need is deeper. It will show itself when the current steadies. She taps the corner of the touchpad with 2 fingers, humming under her breath once, and the rows climb into place with a kind of mechanical sigh. A subtle line of darker text breaks the uniformity like a vein in stone. The security guard clears his throat softly, not as a challenge, but as a bookmark. He's telling the room he's present. He's telling himself he is still needed. The radio at his shoulder hisses and then goes quiet again, a wave that never reaches the shore. He smells like mint gum chewed slowly. His shoes make a dry whisper when he shifts weight from heel to toe.
Maya's free hand finds my wrist. Her thumb presses the spot where pulse meets skin. She has learned to count in ordinary seconds and extraordinary ones. I let her keep time. I have been keeping time too long. I release the need to own it and keep the need to record it. In my breast pocket, the pen warms itself against my body. It wants to be used again. It can wait. The attendant's posture loosens. He has seen something he cannot name yet. The supervisor sees it too and starts gathering the pieces in her head. I watch their faces more than the screen, because faces tell the truth faster. His eyes thin and then brighten. Hers narrow and then lift. The binder's plastic edge presses a shallow trench into the laminate, and a fine crease splits the reflection of the fluorescent bulbs. I lay my printed email exactly parallel to the policy sheet and center both under the supervisor's gaze. The smell of disinfectant rides a small breeze off the counter and turns sweet in the back of my throat. A toddler laughs at a book's pop-up, and the sound folds itself into the space between us like a ribbon. The accumulation is not dramatic.
It is procedural. My number was passed, my folder was examined, my place was gently suggested to be anywhere but here. The policy sat within reach and was not reached for. Each act is small enough to deny if held alone. Together, they weigh enough to tilt a day. I have spent a life weighing such bundles. I have learned to bring a scale that does not wobble. Maya shifts her phone to the email's footer, the line with the booking reference and the timestamp. She does not say a thing. Her breath is a small, reliable rhythm under the library's drone. The code catches the light and returns it like a coin. The attendant's posture loosens. He has seen something he cannot name yet. The supervisor sees it too and starts gathering the pieces in her head. I watch their faces more than the screen, because faces tell the truth faster. His eyes thin and then brighten, hers narrow and then lift. The binder's plastic edge presses a shallow trench into the laminate, and a fine crease splits the reflection of the fluorescent bulbs. I lay my printed email exactly parallel to the policy sheet and center both under the supervisor's gaze. The smell of disinfectant rides a small breeze off the counter and turns sweet in the back of my throat. A toddler laughs at a book's pop-up, and the sound folds itself into the space between us like a ribbon. The accumulation is not dramatic. It is procedural. My number was passed, my folder was examined. My place was gently suggested to be anywhere but here. The policy sat within reach and was not reached for. Each act is small enough to deny if held alone. Together, they weigh enough to tilt a day. I have spent a life weighing such bundles. I have learned to bring a scale that does not wobble. Maya shifts her phone to the email's footer, the line with the booking reference and the timestamp. She does not say a thing. Her breath is a small, reliable rhythm under the library's drone. The code catches the light and returns it like a coin. The supervisor points at the monitor with the bent knuckle of someone who writes more than she types. The attendant nods once and clicks on a row. The table changes color where the highlight lands, and the shape that emerges is not a picture, but a certainty a person can feel in their knuckles. My body recognizes the tilt of the moment before my mind names it. The temperature of the counter under my palm shifts a degree toward warm. The weight of the folder seems to pass into the laminate, as if the proof itself has decided to stop floating and take on solid form. I breathe and let a memory loosen in me. Long ago, in a different branch, I trained a new clerk to trust the log over the chatter. The lesson was simple. If the record is good, it will hold. If it fails, fix the record. Don't fix the person. Both of us left that day a little better for having said it out loud. The echo of that lesson finds me now, an invisible hand at the small of my back, nudging me to stand steady. Outside the windows, October leans early toward dusk. The glass dulls the street noise until it sounds like a tide arguing with itself. A delivery van coughs and goes silent. The automatic doors take a breath and close, showing me my own faint reflection across the counter. I see a man with a blue folder, a girl with a phone, a guard with a clipboard, a supervisor with a binder, an attendant with a mouse, a small democracy of objects with jobs to do. I decide, quietly and completely, that no matter what the system says next, I will make a record of this hour that can be read by people who were not here. I will ask for the form. I will fill it with a script that shows kindness and expectation in equal parts. I will write names, times, and the bones of our process. I will request a review of the filter steps. I will request that the policy be read at shift changes. I will request that the laminated sheet be moved from its plastic altar to the living space of the counter. The plan arranges itself like books in a sequence my hands remember.
Maya senses the decision in me and squeezes my wrist once. The squeeze is not celebration, it is alignment. She is my witness and my anchor,
and the bridge between paper and screen. The ally I built with time and love stands next to me with the tool the room cannot ignore. Her presence keeps my voice from rising and my proof from slipping. The supervisor stops scrolling. The cursor rests on a line whose edges even I can feel from where I stand, a small rectangle of meaning amid the gray and white sea. She leans fractionally closer to the glass, and the overhead bulbs mark her hair with a pale bar. The attendant's breath catches and releases, as if he is stepping onto a moving walkway and trusting it to carry him forward. The overhead clock shifts to the next minute, each red segment settling into place with deliberate grace, and the supervisor's fingertip hovers over the row where my code waits to be read. If this resonates, leave a like, add your perspective below, and share it forward. Her fingertip settles on the row and stays there long enough for the room to adjust around the stillness. The screen's glare softens on her glasses. I keep my breathing even and let the counter's cool laminate wick some of the heat from my palms. The policy sheet and my printout lie side by side like two quiet witnesses. The binder smells faintly of plastic and stale toner, the scent of 1,000 small decisions recorded for later. She asks the attendant to widen the view so the columns show status, last edit, and notes. He moves through the menus with the careful economy of someone newly aware of how each motion reads to a watching crowd. The table unfurls another inch. I cannot read every label from this angle, but I can read the posture of the people reading it. Attention narrows. The hum of the fluorescents takes a step back. Even the printer behind us waits its turn. I let memory rise, but not roll me over. Years among stacks taught me that order does not enforce itself, it needs hands. This is where my plan begins to breathe beyond thought. I ask for the policy to remain on the counter, not tucked away, and for the steps to be walked in front of the room. The supervisor nods, a small acknowledgement that procedure belongs to the public, not only to the staff. She invites the attendant to recreate the search that had missed my reservation, this time aloud, so the error can be understood and not simply corrected. He retraces the clicks. The first filter is too narrow. The second excludes a category by default. The third assumes in-person check-in that was not required for reservations confirmed online. I can feel the pattern lock into place the way a misshelved book telegraphs its mistake to a trained hand. The supervisor adjusts the settings and the log settles into a truer picture. The row that matters aligns with the hour on the lobby clock and the subject line on Maya's phone. It feels inevitable and new at once. The security guard takes one slow step back, as if invited by gravity to give the counter a breath of space. His radio is now quiet. The wintergreen on his collar recedes. He rests his clipboard against his thigh and becomes more observation than barrier. It is not surrender, it is recalibration. The square he holds in his mind shifts a few inches to include the policy sheet, my printout, and the binder page as the boundary itself. He stands within procedure rather than in front of it. My brother lingers near the registration forms, the smirk evaporated, replaced by the unpracticed look of a man watching a machine he rarely notices begin to work. He is not a villain in this story, only a weather vane that shows which way the breeze of habit tilts. He glances from my page to the screen and then to Maya's phone, as if measuring three versions of reality and finding them congruent in a way that complicates his ease. I feel no triumph in that. Weather is information, I file it and move on.
The families nearby adjust themselves into a semicircle of patience.
The mother, who had watched my arrival, shifts her weight and sets down a diaper bag so her hands are free to witness. The father beside her nods almost imperceptibly at the lines on the policy, as if counting them into his own understanding. Their presence closes a small subplot I had not named, the quiet fear that I was building a case no one else could see. Now eyes are on the same page, literally and otherwise. I ask for the incident form. The supervisor opens a lower drawer and produces a stack bound with a thin black clip. The paper is weightier than standard and has that faint clay smell of stock that expects ink. She places one on the counter with a pen and flips her binder to a tab that lists the process: date, time, parties involved, description of procedure, recommended corrective steps. I recognize the cadence. It belongs to systems that take themselves seriously. I steady my blue folder, draw the pen from my breast pocket, and begin with the time carved into my internal slate and the digits on the lobby clock. Arrival, reservation code, sequence of called numbers, inspection of folder, policy within reach but not applied, request for verification, filter adjusted. I keep my writing plain, grain-free, the way I taught teenagers to write the truth of what they saw without trying to decorate it. Maya becomes my counterweight. She scrolls the email to show the booking details, then captures the screen so the timestamp is embedded. She notes the battery percentage for completeness because she has learned that context protects facts from being called isolated. She taps the small icon that stores a copy to a shared drive, then tucks the phone close again. Her quiet efficiency closes another small thread, the fear that memory alone would have to hold this moment. Now it is saved outside us. The supervisor asks the attendant to read the relevant portion of the policy aloud. He does, voice flat at first, then steadier as the words make a path for him. Prioritized reservations, order of arrival, grace period. He reads a line about staff responsibility to verify the log when a patron presents written confirmation. The air changes around us the way it does when a door you didn't know was closed is opened. The laminated sheet, ghosted by scuffs, feels newly alive in its plastic sleeve. I ask that it stay visible on the work surface, not behind it. The supervisor agrees and slides the stand forward until it kisses the edge of the counter. The security guard nods once to himself, the subtle nod of a person who likes having a rule to align with. His hands ease off the clipboard. He repositions so that his watchful line of sight includes the reading nook and the counter equally. He stops asking to look in my folder. He does not need to. His job has been given lines to color inside again. That subplot closes too, the loop of inspection that had become its own story. The attendant's shoulders lower a notch, and the stiffness in his neck dissolves as the process gives him something firm to stand on. I do not need him to apologize. I need him to learn. I see the learning land the way a stamp lands, perfectly on the square, dead center. He follows the supervisor's prompt to rerun the search with the corrected filters, narrates the steps, and arrives at the row with my code as if he had known the way all along. It is a rehearsal for the moment when rehearsal will not be required.
I add to the form a set of recommendations, modest in tone, specific in shape. Policy reading at shift start. Sticky note near the terminal reminding staff of the filter defaults. Relocation of the laminated sheet to the active work area. Periodic review of the incident log for patterns that suggest a glitch. A quick card for patrons showing the essentials of how reservations are validated, not to deputize them as staff, but to invite them into the same map. I keep my language functional, because functional language is what people reach for when the room is busy. Maya finishes assembling our packet of proofs. Printed email with code, screenshot with timestamp, note of our arrival time, the lobby clock digits she captured at the second they skipped past our place. She slides the pieces into the pocket of my folder and pats it once, a small ceremony for a common archive. The gesture is ordinary and sacred in equal measure. It closes the thread of our preparation without tying a final knot. The mother who is watched offers a short account to the supervisor of the numbers called out of order. She does it in the voice people use when they understand their role is to make a system stronger, not to tear a person down. The father confirms the moment the inspection of my folder occurred after the Passover. The supervisor notes their names and thanks them with a nod that means more than the word thanks usually holds. Witnesses are not extras, they are structure. My brother drifts a step closer and looks at the policy sheet as if seeing coordinates on a map. The weather veers toward still. I do not meet his eyes because this is not the place to win anything but the point. His presence quiets on its own. That subplot closes not with a turn, but with a settling. The attendant reaches for the key caddy behind the counter and removes the tag that corresponds to the children's room. He does not hand it over yet. The act stays suspended, a physical note held until the measure turns. He places the key on the laminate between the policy and my printout. The metal is cool and heavy-looking, scratched by years of purpose. Its presence is a promise without yet becoming a delivery. The supervisor gathers a compact stack, my incident form with the first half filled, the policy visible, the log page printed to attach, the key resting visibly beside it all. She notes that training points will be added to the staff huddle, and that the policy stand will remain in the working space. She sets the binder open to the policy page as a visual anchor and squares the edges of the papers so they make a neat rectangle that tells the room nothing is being hidden. I breathe and feel my chest loosen around the old habit of bracing. The colors in the children's corner look a little truer, the alphabet mats less tired. The lobby clock continues its calm tyranny. My hands know what to do next and are content to wait until it is their moment. Maya leans into me with the weight that children have when they are perfectly awake and perfectly patient. We have not resolved anything yet, not in the way a movie resolves, but the subplots have found their shelves. The inspection that needed narrowing has narrowed. The policy that needed daylight has sunlight on it. The witnesses who felt like background have stepped into frame. The staff who felt alone inside their hurry have a page to stand on. The plan I built in my head has moved part way into paper and practice. Nothing dramatic has happened, and yet the room feels less likely to bend the wrong way under its own busyness.
I sign the portion of the form that affirms my account is accurate to the best of my memory and hand the pen back to the counter for its next duty. The blue folder closes with a soft breath of paper against paper and rests under my palm like a living thing satisfied to be recognized. The key remains between us, ordinary and bright in the fluorescent light. The supervisor aligns the stacks so the policy title sits clearly in view. The attendant straightens the laminated stand. The security guard watches both the door and the counter with equal attention. I let my shoulders fall a fraction and hold the moment in my body the way you hold a note a hair longer than the sheet music says you should, just long enough to make meaning without asking for applause. The library breathes. October leans at the windows. My granddaughter's hand is warm around my wrist. The room is arranged for a fair next step, and the air, finally, is still enough to carry it. The supervisor lifts the stack, sets it down again, and turns the monitor toward the counter so that the screen becomes part of the room. She asks for silence without raising her voice. The fluorescent hum steps back. The children's corner rustles like leaves settling. She reads the row that has been waiting for air. Reservation confirmed. Code A103. Children's room. Time block beginning at the minute my internal clock had guarded. The words are not dramatic. They land with the weight of a stamp finding the center of its square. She follows the reading with the policy itself, tracing each bullet point with a steady finger. Prioritized reservations. Order of arrival. Grace period. Staff responsibility to verify written confirmation. Her voice is even, the way we once trained clerks to be when they became the mouth of a rule. She states plainly that the filter settings earlier hid my record from the first search, that the corrected search reveals it, and that the room owes its next move to what is written here and now. She looks to the attendant. He does not flinch. He takes a breath, squares his shoulders, and says that the reservation is valid and that the room will be assigned accordingly. It is not an apology shaped like contrition. It is an apology shaped like procedure taking its place. He lifts the key and sets it in my open palm. Metal meets skin with a cool, practical weight. The moment is not about winning. It is about alignment. The families near the counter let out a small collective breath. The mother who had watched nods, satisfied not for me but for the map. The father beside her smiles with his eyes and shifts the diaper bag higher. The security guard, freed from the loop that had mistaken vigilance for solution, adjusts his stance to cover both the doorway and the counter without hovering. His clipboard drops to his side and stays there. His role shifts from gate to guardrail. The supervisor writes on my form in neat, deliberate lines. She records the cause. Filter configuration error. Failure to verify upon presentation of written confirmation. She outlines the corrective action. Staff huddle before the next shift. Policy stand moved permanently to the active work area. Reminder card taped near the terminal about default filters. She adds that the laminated policy will be read at the beginning of each shift this month, that incident logs will be reviewed weekly for patterns, and that a small patron-facing card explaining reservation validation will be printed and kept at the counter. She signs and dates. She hands me a copy. Paper against paper makes a sound I trust. My brother stands a little closer now, his hands out of his pockets for the first time today. He looks at the key in my palm, then at Maya's phone, then at the policy sheet. Something in his posture loosens, as if a knot he had tied long ago remembered how to undo itself. He is not the antagonist of my day. He is my witness to how days bend when no one is watching. He nods once, small, enough.
The attendant clears his throat and addresses the people waiting. He explains, in brief and careful phrases, that reservations will be honored by the order in which they were made and checked in, and that if a conflict arises, the policy on the counter will guide resolution. He does not mention me by name. He does not need to. He mentions the option of dividing time when it helps. I hear my suggestion echoed and set aside the petty desire to own it. We are all better when good ideas stop needing credit. Maya leans her head against my arm for a second, and I feel the small weight of her victory without spectacle. She slides the phone into her pocket and takes the incident copy with both hands, holding it as if it were a certificate we earned together. I think of her future visits to rooms like this and feel something in me unclench that has been tightening for years. I turn the key once in my palm and feel the scratches, the history etched into the metal by other hands on other afternoons. The children's room door waits at the end of the short corridor, a rectangle of quiet under a soft fixture. The carpet there smells faintly of plastic and paper dust. Innocent scents I have always trusted. The alphabet mats hold their colors steady, primary, and sure. I offer a half block of our time to the family behind us, and the father, his baby now asleep against his chest, accepts without fuss. We agree to 15 and 15, a small civics lesson disguised as generosity. Before I step away, I ask the supervisor for one more line on the form, a simple public acknowledgement to the room of what happened and how it will be corrected. She agrees. She turns and states with the same even voice that a reservation was missed due to a filter error, that the policy is now at hand, that verification will be done when patrons present written confirmation, and that staff will receive immediate guidance. No names, no spectacle, just the dignity of a clean correction. There are consequences, and they are the right size. The attendant will review the policy at the next huddle and practice the search steps until they live in his hands. The supervisor will add a 10-minute policy read to the start of the next 3 shifts. The security guard will adjust his inspection routine so that verification precedes any request to open personal materials when documentation is already present. The policy stand, once a shrine behind glass, now lives at the front line. These are not punishments. They are adjustments that respect everyone's time. I walk toward the children's room with Maya at my side and my brother 2 steps behind. The corridor is short, and the air cools a degree as we leave the lobby. The key finds the lock like a sentence finding its verb. The click is honest. Inside, the lamps are low and kind. Pillars wait in primary colors. A low shelf tilts its books forward as if offering an apology on behalf of the building. I do not need the apology. I need the time we prepared to use. We sit on the carpet. Maya chooses the first book, one with a wide sky and a small figure learning to count stars. My brother hovers in the doorway, and then, as if choosing not to choose is too heavy, steps inside and settles on a cushion near the wall. He studies the room the way a person studies the inside of a wrist after a watch has been finally removed. He is quiet. Quiet is enough. I read. My voice warms to the text the way tea warms a cup. The letters line up and become the sound of a train leaving a station right on time. Maya laughs softly when the small figure finds the first star, and the sound puts a shine on the minutes. I keep an eye on the clock because that is who I am, but I let the story hold the space. Outside the glass, the library moves through its routines, rebalanced and calmer. At the counter, the policy stands like a lighthouse without needing to flash.
At the halfway point, I pause and look at my brother. He lifts a book from the shelf, hesitates, then opens it and traces the first line with his finger the way we did when we were boys. The years fall briefly to reveal 2 small faces in a different branch. 2 boys who learned to be orderly because mess had been a kind of danger. We share a small unannounced truce over paper. I return to our book. The second half of our time belongs to the family waiting, and the knowledge that we will make room for them strengthens my voice. When our minutes are done, we stack the pillows and straighten the books.
I hold the key in my palm for a second longer and then return it to the counter where the supervisor waits with the completed incident copy. The attendant looks me in the eye, steady now, and thanks me for the patience and the documentation. The security guard offers a brief nod to Maya, a private recognition that her small square of light helped steer the room. The mother and father step forward with their child, and we trade places without friction. I breathe in the lobby's blended smell of paper, wool, and warm plastic. The red digits on the clock keep their even march. The map on the wall still shows the same rooms, but I know they are a little different now. The difference is not a trophy. It is a corridor that will be easier to walk the next time. My brother falls into step with us. He says nothing, but there is space beside him that wasn't there before. We head toward the doors. October leans in on a cool shoulder and the glass slides open. I carry the blue folder under my arm, lighter than when we arrived. Maya slips her hand into mine with a small squeeze that says, without saying, that today counted. I step into the evening and let the door close behind me with a hush, and the lesson folds itself into one clear line in my chest. Calm is a public tool when it stands on the right rule. If you stayed to the end, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me what you'd do, especially if it were your family. Until next time.